Good morning to you. Welcome to your bite-sized word of encouragement for today. And today I'm taking a look at 1 Kings chapter 18, and it's the prophet Elijah. I've been thinking about this quite a lot lately. So what I do on these bite-sized videos to encourage you is I share what I've been thinking about, what I feel God is saying to me, what I'm meditating on, and hopefully it's going to help you to pick up what I'm thinking about and hear even more revelation, because that's what happens. The Spirit of God releases something to someone, they share it, and it sparks off revelation in your own thinking, in your own spirit. So 1 Kings 18 is a very interesting chapter because it's the whole thing about God says, at the beginning of 1 Kings 18, God says to Elijah, now remember there has been a famine, but God says to Elijah, it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year. So it's been 3 years of drought, which Elijah himself had prophesied. Go, present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the earth. So God says to Elijah, just go and be there, show up, and I'm going to send rain. But if you read through the whole of 1 Kings 18, God doesn't send rain the moment Elijah appeared before Ahab, the king. The rain didn't suddenly come. There were a whole lot of things that happened before the rain came. And then after that, they go up to Mount Carmel, remember? And Elijah calls down fire. All the prophets of Baal are doing their thing. They're cutting themselves. They're doing their dances, and nothing happens. But Elijah prepares the altar, puts water on the sacrifice, and then calls down fire, and God shows up. He confirms who the one and only true God is, and all the people saw it in verse 39. They fell on their faces and they said, the Lord, He is God, the Lord, He is God. And then all the prophets of Baal are executed. So this to me is what revival would look like, or just my thinking, that when everything is impossible, when it looks like God can't, why would God answer by fire? When everybody's eyes had been on the prophets of Baal and worshipping Baal, and then there's a suddenly that happens and things are turned around. After 3 years of drought, the fire comes down from heaven, and suddenly people realize Baal is not the true God we've been worshipping. Your God, Elijah, the God you just called upon, has answered you by fire, and we fall on our faces and we acknowledge that He is God. But then, remember, in verse 1, God had said to him, go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain. There's still no rain. There's fire, there's revival, but there's still no rain. And so in verse 41, Elijah said to Ahab, now he's still operating out of that first word, no sign of rain, but he says in full confidence, because now Elijah himself has just seen God send fire and fire on the sacrifice, on the altar. Elijah said, go up and eat and drink, for there is the sound of abundance of rain. There's no sound. The only sound Elijah heard was the word that God promised. I will send rain on the earth. So, and then we know he goes up and he prays, and he sends his servant 7 times, and he comes back 6 times and says there's nothing. Many times when God has given us a promise, we've seen all the miracles before, we've seen the fire come down on the sacrifice, the enemy's been dealt with, and there's still, way back, there's still this promise that's waiting to manifest. And it's in these times, what do we do while we're waiting for the promise? Are we going to do what Elijah did? 6 times his servant comes back and says there's nothing. But Elijah knew he just needed one small sign that this was the right timing. And this is what it was all about. God didn't send rain as soon as he said it, but there was a timing for this rain to come. And Elijah was prepared to be up on that mountain. He went to the top of Mount Carmel, where he had just had the victory. All the prophets of Baal were now dealt with. And it was Elijah and God and the other prophets, obviously, that had been protected and hidden away. But it was Elijah and God waiting for that word to come to pass. And then he said, it came to pass the 7th time that he said, there is a cloud as small as a man's hand rising up out of the sea. And now I can just hear the sound of excitement in Gehazi, his servant's voice. At last it's happening. You're not going to look like an idiot. How many times have you felt like an idiot when you're confessing the word God has promised you? And there's nothing. It seems as if there's nothing happening. And then the servant was excited. And then Elijah said, go up. Say to Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down before the rain stops you. Because he knew this was the sign that God was about to fulfill that prophetic word. And I feel, after he said that in verse 46, I don't want to leave this out. Then the hand of the Lord came upon Elijah, and he girded up his loins and ran ahead of Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. So not only did he wait for the timing of the word, he didn't give up in those 6 times to say, oh, it was my imagination. He waited, and when he saw the first sign of the rain coming, he knew that what he had said to Ahab, there's the sound of abundance of rain. He knew it was about to happen. Now, can you imagine that sense? Maybe you've had it before when you've had a promise and you've waited and waited and you haven't given up, and then that promise comes to pass. Just the sense of, wow, God is amazing. God is faithful to his word. And I believe we are in a season where we are going to see the suddenlies of God. That people who are like Elijah up on Mount Carmel, and they're waiting for the first sign of the word, and they're in that posture of, God, I'm waiting. I know that I can't make this thing happen, but my expectation, my waiting, my eyes are on you. And there's this suddenly that's going to come, even if it's a small sign. A report from the doctor to say, oh, I see some progress in your healing. There's a small sign that there's favor with your creditors. All kinds of things that God has promised you, you're going to have a breakthrough in. You're going to see the small sign, even if it's the size of a man's hand. And it's time for you and I to change our declaration from where are the miracles? Where's the breakthrough? When is this going to happen? To say, I hear the sound of the promise that God has given me, and I'm going to go with that sound, and I'm not going to give up until it manifests in my life. So be encouraged with that today. God is with you. He's for you. He's with you right at the top of the mountain, because he's the one who promised that he would do what he said he would do. And you keep your eyes on him because he is faithful. So be encouraged with that today.